You are listening to Lone Star Community Radio, on 104.5 KCZW LP Conroe and 106.1 KZCC LP Conroe, and worldwide at irlonestar.com.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Legal Connection with Toni and Cheryl. Toni and I are here every Tuesday from 12 to 1 p.m. Talking about legal issues, legal matters. We are two Texas licensed attorneys, and we do this as a public service. For our listeners, we know there are a lot of you guys out there. Thank you. We appreciate you listening. If you have any questions, you can message us live on Facebook. You can watch us live on Facebook. You can download the podcast tomorrow on Google Play and iTunes and listen anytime you want.
And I do get questions from Facebook people, and they actually send me emails, and they have questions about their cars and repairs, and, I'll help them out. There's going to be a disclaimer that I don't have all the facts in it, but if they want to talk to me and I'm driving and I got the time, so I've always got a little bit of time while I'm driving, not double charging my clients or anything, I'll answer the questions.
Right. That's right. We're here for you. And today we want to talk about some upcoming changes to the law.
Effective September 1st. But before we do that, I just want to say one thing, because we were talking about this earlier, just before the show, our little 15-minute prep, about movies. And there's a movie that just came out. It was called Overcomer, and I was going to see it, and I haven't seen it yet. But there was I was just listening to some radio station, and it was talking about the movie Dead Man Walking. And I'd never seen the movie. I'd heard of it. I thought
That's
it was
from the 90s, right?
It was actually out in 1995. And I didn't know anything about it other than I just thought it sounded like a dumb title. And I thought those liberals in Hollywood made this movie, and I didn't know anything about it. What? It ended up that it was written by Sister Helen Prejean, and she's still alive, she's 80. She was a Catholic nun that was born in Baton Rouge in 1939, and of course that piqued my interest because I was born in Baton Rouge. My mother and her two sisters were all born in Baton Rouge in the late 30s, and there was only it was pretty small back then, and there was only a couple of schools, so I figured they might have known each other. Anyway, she wrote a book, and she actually wrote the book Dead Man Walking, and it was about a guy that she visited on death row in the Louisiana State Penitentiary, and I think they used to call it Angola. It may have been in Angola, but it was really a fascinating movie. And when I'm only bringing it up because I thought that maybe I'm related to Sister Helen Prejean because she's
Your
born in Baton Rouge.
from that area,
and
right?
And I believe that everybody from Louisiana is related somehow or another. Really not like Adam and Eve, but close in the pike there. The
Dead Man Walking.
The Dead Man Walking. That they said in the movie, it was called Dead Man Walking because whenever a death row inmate is taken out of their cell, and I was looking at this on Wikipedia to kind of confirm it, that they actually call out, almost like when you're calling out when you're playing golf, dead man walking, because they consider them dead men. And it's sort of twofold. They're alerting people around them to stay away because they only come out of their cell for 1 hour a day. When you're on death row, you're in isolated seclusion 23 hours a day. So they say dead man walking, and that's why she named it that. And ends up in that movie, and I won't tell you the whole thing. It ends up that Susan Sarandon got the Academy Award for it in 1995.
Oh, she won?
And I thought it was one of those movies, just like the Song of Bernadette, where really it was just a bunch of close-ups of her crying, and she could be crying about anything, and they did close-up. But it ended up being a very good movie, and it had Sean Penn in it, and it was when I think he was still with Madonna, who knows, but very, very
back
good movie.
then, he would have been.
And it ends up, and I won't give it away because if I gave any other part of it, but I want you to see it because it really had a lot of the legal wranglings of what happens when you need to appeal something. And I was watching it because Larry Swearington recently got put to death last week by in Texas. I think they'd gone after perhaps his sixth pardon or trying to get a stay because he had been accused of murdering a girl up here in Willis, and 20 years ago. But it was all circumstantial, and usually in those cases, I don't think there should be a death sentence. And so I was, just in my opinion, that they should have probably stayed that only because they just didn't have any proof.
Right.
There was nothing. There was no witnesses. It was
Right.
all circumstantial. And they ended up putting him to death. And I actually cried, which was weird. I think I must have been really emotional that night or something. So it made me go watch this movie, which was about people that are on death row. And there were some people that, it looks like they, unless you absolutely know and there was a confession and there was absolute proof, like Ted Bundy,
and Bundy never retook that confession back. I mean, he stuck with it once he made it.
And then there's so much evidence.
Right.
But when you've only got one killing, and a lot of people don't get death sentences. Like I did a case where my friend was murdered by her father-in-law in cold blood, and
Right.
it was just in cold blood. And then he tried to kill her husband, and he only got 15 years by a jury.
Right.
And then they made it concurrent, another 5 years for the aggravated assault where he tried to kill, but then didn't go off the father or the husband. I said the father because I knew the kids too.
Your friend's husband as well?
Yeah, but he lived, and he
Terrible.
now after it really was traumatic. But he only got 15 years, and
Right.
and he'll
There's
be out
such a disparity.
in like 2023, and so they're keeping him in the whole time.
Right.
But he was up for parole after this 7 years. So there is a disparity, and sometimes it doesn't seem like justice is done. And in this one instance, it kind of bothered me. But Dead Man Walking, good movie. I think everybody should see it. After I saw it, I really liked it. But we're getting down to what's I think more apropos to our listeners, and that's laws that are going to come into effect September 1st, 2019. And there's a lot of them that we just don't know about. And so take it from here.
Okay. So following the exceptionally chaotic and combative 2017 session, many journalists found that the 2019 session of the Texas legislature to be downright dull. The 2017 spectacle featured open tension between the conservative and moderate factions of the Texas Republican Party, public insults traded between Republican leaders, and a heated bathroom bill debate.
It was. You remember the bathroom
Fisticuffs, I sure do. Fisticuffs between legislators, and a special session on dozens of hot-button issues.
So 2017, there was no kumbaya. It was they were taking it to the streets, our legislatures, over. I think it's because they're all conservatives. That's my thought on that.
Right. So in contrast, the 2019 session has been widely named the Kumbaya session, which you just said. The Republican Big Three, governor, lieutenant governor, and speaker, remained politically unified, focusing their legislative energies on substantive meat and potatoes policy issues.
Which is what we want. That's what they should always be doing.
Right. They largely sidestepped debates on the most divisive social issues, and they shepherded legislators into passing landmark, if not universally popular, reforms to the state's property tax and school finance system.
So it was a really good session because we had alignment by our governor and our and the legislature to the extent that, well, I say alignment with the governor, lieutenant governor, speaker, and the governor, but they had a little tension, that little pushback from this almost Democratic sweep. Because we had, that happened in Harris County. It didn't happen in Montgomery County, of course, but Harris County and the Dallas area, they're very populous, and so that's pretty scary. And so what they did was, it was a little shock. So they got to work, and we got some pretty good laws passed. We're going to talk about today.
Good. Well, one law that was passed was the property tax reform. It was a Senate Bill 2, bars cities, counties, and special districts from increasing property tax collections by more than 3.5% in any year without a vote of the public.
That is amazing.
I know.
We needed that. I thought it was 10% before.
Yeah, without a vote of the public.
Yes.
So to increase them any more than that, the public has to vote. School districts are capped at 2.5%. This is a major reduction from the current cap of 8%.
I thought it was 10, but 8, 10, I knew they're all different. But this is very important. This is
It says Democrats and local officials warn that the new tighter revenue limits could seriously disrupt local budgets and services.
They won't.
Come on.
Yeah, they just want more money to put in their own pockets. Give me a break.
Well, right. Okay, so school finance reform. Here's another one. The legislature accomplished something many insiders thought impossible, enacting wholesale school finance reforms without a court mandate. House Bill 3 provides a total of $11.6 billion in new state funding for public education, $4.5 billion for a 20% general increase in per-student baseline funding, and targeted funding increases for pre-kindergarten programs, third grade reading proficiency, and dyslexia.
Man, I wish they had that when I was in school because I was dyslexic. In the third grade, I was deemed just like the dumbest kid on the block.
But you were just dyslexic.
And so I became very athletic. So it was kind of good in a way because I was dyslexic, right? Dyslexic. But then I was really good at math. And so they're like, okay, you're just autistic because you know numbers. It's like, okay, they just relabeled me. And these pre-kindergarten programs are very, very important for working moms and working parents because everybody before, when my kids were in kindergarten, pre-kindergarten, they couldn't. It was unfair that only the people that were the lowest poverty level could get their kids into pre-K.
No kidding.
When I really needed my kids in there for the Head Start they were going to get.
Right.
So this is really, really good.
Okay, so $2 billion. They also approved this $2 billion for an average salary increase of $4,000 for teachers, librarians, nurses, and counselors.
Good.
Okay, over $5 billion for buying down. That's in quotes. Buying down school districts, maintenance, and operation tax rates to provide taxpayer relief. An average of 8 cents per $100 property $100 property valuation in 2020.
So they were mitigating. They're making the bill that they just passed, the law that they just passed, work by getting funding to buy down the increases.
Right.
That's what they're doing.
And lift a tax burden off the taxpayer. Okay, an average of 8 cents per $100 property valuation in 2020 and an additional 5 cents per 100 property valuation in 2021. So that's great.
That really makes a big difference. Not to people that are leasing necessarily, but to property owners, very much so.
And if they're leasing, someone owns that property.
Yes, so that maybe their
it's
rent
going
will
to
be
help
lower. Yeah.
somebody. Okay, abortion. The legislature declined to consider Alabama-style changes to Roe v. Wade, but did enact less ambitious restrictions. Senate Bill 22 prevents state and local governments from partnering with abortion providers like Planned Parenthood and even non-abortion health programs.
Well, so they declined to consider the Alabama-style Roe versus Wade because Alabama took it away, correct? Completely.
Just recently.
Yeah. So they're very conservative. What's going on with that? Do you know? We don't know Alabama law.
Well, I think it's there was an absolute ban on second trimester abortion, and
I kept thinking in my mind they were going to have to go across the state, which they would have.
Well, it depends on where they are in their pregnancy. I mean, I'm just like going from memory, but from what I remember, according to Roe v. Wade. It was up to the individual in the first trimester. There were some restrictions in the second trimester and completely up to the state in the third trimester, basically. That's just kind of the down and dirty of it. But Alabama placed restrictions that weren't there before on second trimester abortions.
Okay.
I
knew
think
it was
that's what happened.
I thought Alabama banned it. I thought that was really strong, but we've got
they were very restrictive, but they didn't ban it.
We've got some friends that are coming in from the Alabama game because we go there when A&M plays over there, and they come here, and they're coming here this year. So I'm going to ask about it. But they're conservative over there in Alabama. But I'll tell you what, they all have that A tattooed on their body. I mean, everybody. They must get it like when they're born. They get an A branded on them.
It's like the Sneetches on beaches,
yes,
with the stars on their bellies.
Yes,
the Dr.
it's the craziest thing. They're all such crazy football fanatics.
Yeah.
As well they should be, except for they did lose the championship this year, so they got some working out to do.
There you go.
Of course, Alabama didn't. It was the other. Who won? Oh, no, it wasn't Alabama. I was thinking Crimson Tide versus. I'm bad. I should know my SEC. It was not even an SEC team that won the championship last year, as I recall. But it should have been, and it will be this year. Okay, so Alabama.
Okay, so we got some changes to guns. We talked about that in our last show, too. But the legislature failed to enact the constitutional carry handgun rights, i.e. carry without licensing.
Yes. Our guys really wanted just to have carte blanche, constitutional rights, and we wouldn't go that far.
That was promoted by some gun right activists. But it did enact House Bill 302, which permits tenants to possess lawfully owned firearms in leased dwellings, regardless of landlord objections, and Senate Bill 535, which allows licensed handgun owners to carry their arms in places of worship unless expressly prohibited by the institution. And we've discussed that at length.
Yeah, and then I think that pretty much was a kind of a derivative of that shooting the shootings that were happening in churches.
Me too. Yeah. State versus local control. The revenue limitations in Senate Bill 2 and House Bill 3 are obviously fairly extreme examples of state preemption over local control. On the other hand, cities were successful in defeating legislation that would have removed their ability to enact local ordinances requiring employers to provide paid sick leave or regulating short-term rental companies like Airbnb.
Okay, so let's analyze that for a
Yeah.
minute. What's going on with that? The revenue limitations and the laws that were passed are extreme examples of the state exemption over preemption over local control. So basically the state's saying that we can control you.
Sure.
And
Over ordinances, municipal ordinances, and all of that. You're going to do locality. You're going to do what we say.
right. That's almost like in the federal government, where the federal government, there's a constitutional, we are talking about that, the amendment, that the states have their own rights. The federal government cannot step in over the things that states can regulate. The federal government can't come in and say, you're going to do it our way and have a broad.
And you're going to work for us.
Right.
You're going to do all the things we tell
All
you
that
to
stuff
do.
you-
I think it came right down to that. It was
Yeah.
just kind of a money thing.
Yeah, but this is saying that they were the state was able to get jurisdiction and muscle over the locals, which is opposite of what you would think. And, the way that the federal government gets around, I say the government, the way we get federal laws passed that are in place that do overtake state rights are through the Supreme Court, like Roe versus Wade, and I guess I want to say it was Gant. It was Arizona versus Gant.
Well, Lawrence v. Texas.
So it's not the
Gay
actual
marriage.
law that
Right.
allows it to like
Not
gay
marriage,
rights and
but,
stuff.
yeah.
But here it's saying that the state can kind of, take some like they're the parent. So that's kind of surprising to me. But on the other hand, cities were successful in defeating legislation that would have removed their ability to enact local ordinances requiring employees to provide paid sick leave. So the cities can now have paid sick leave or regulate short-term rental companies like Airbnb, which is kind of weird too.
Well, see, they had the ability, and I guess the state was fighting to revoke their abilities to enact local ordinances.
Right,
saying
so
that
that's like
employers
Montgomery
pay for
County
sick-
now, or the city of Conroe.
Could before say.
Can now say, I don't care what you say, state, our Airbnbs can do this.
Right.
Which is that's contrary to as a lawyer, that's contrary to statutes. That's a pretty
Interesting.
big. You're going to have to look at the conflicts in law. Another class that I did not take that I probably should have, but that's what it's going to come down to. If there's ever an argument on Airbnb, whether the state says one thing and the statutes in the Texas Property Code and the city ordinances say another, who will prevail? But that's another day, another dollar.
Okay, so I think this makes me mad, this one. Tobacco. Senate Bill 21 prohibits the sale of cigarettes, e-cigarettes, and other tobacco products to Texans younger than 21.
And that makes you mad. Why?
Because that's ridiculous. I mean, look, all of this legislating morality, smoking is bad for you. You shouldn't smoke. And I'm going to pass a law saying, if you're 21, you can't smoke. When I was a kid, drinking age was 18.
Yeah, me
okay?
too.
You can go
We're
to
telling our
war
age.
at
Well,
16.
let's ask our show producer, how old was the drinking age when you were, when could you first drink?
It's whenever my parents said I could.
That's true. Because to go
It's
back to our
true.
other show, if you're with your parents, you can drink. So one parent gives you the authority, and a lot of restaurants won't let you do it. But from
How
the state
old do you have to
statute,
be to enlist in the military?
I'm sure
16?
that there's 18 with some
18,
kind
17?
of exceptions.
Uh-huh. So you can enlist in the military, die for your country, but when you come back home, you can't
That
buy
should
a
be an
pack of
exception, though,
cigarettes.
but we didn't get to find out how old Dick is by default here. How old legally was the age to drink?
21.
21.
Okay.
It's
So
been
there you go.
21 for a
Now,
while.
there should be an exception in the cigarette law and in the drinking law that if you have enlisted in the military and you're on active duty, that if you're fighting and dying for your country, you should be able to drink and smoke, but not before, because you got to learn and train
That's
and
a
all
bunch
that
of
stuff.
bull.
I know.
So that's like saying you're not an adult to make decisions for yourself when until you're 21. I mean, come on.
Well, let me ask you guys this.
I can't hear you. Is your mic on?
Oh, I got. There we go.
There you go.
There I go. Sorry about that, guys. No, I think the question I have for you guys is we know a lot of logic isn't put into laws because of how long they've been in place, and now it's today. But like, for example, here in the state of Texas, you can't purchase liquor at a grocery store or anywhere else but a liquor store, and then you can't purchase liquor at a certain time, or you're restricted, and beer. Like you can't buy beer on Sunday, but till noon.
Yeah,
But
that's
true.
I will throw just
Or after
a
12
quick break.
p.m.
There was legislation where to get around that, you can get it mail order now. We're going to talk about that in a
Yeah,
minute.
because I mean that same thing with 18 and being able
Yeah.
to do things and depending on what's going on because to me you look at it as it's just the way it is. But if why do we really want to change that? Mm-hmm. Because if you're 18, do you really feel 18-year-olds are biting at the door to go buy liquor or buy
no,
cigarettes?
because they can get it.
So to me, it's kind of like
It's
is
just
it
a
really?
dumb, yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually because in my opinion, I think it's because politicians want to get the vote of maybe the older people. They don't care about the younger vote, but and maybe they're just believing that our 18-year-olds can't make wise decisions, which is absolutely absurd because they're in college. Most
Well, they're
18-year-olds
treated
are.
like little tiny babies. This is ridiculous. You're such a little tiny baby.
Well, I also think the military deal was more of a draft decision, wasn't it?
Yeah.
When they
Yeah, because
decided
we needed
18, when 18 was the age they
That's
selected,
true.
it's probably because they go during the time when they wanted to enforce the draft.
But also, that was back when an 18-year-old is considered an adult. They still are today.
Yeah,
I just don't get
I think
this.
you're right. The 21-year-old thing
It's
is a
over
little
the
odd.
top.
Well,
But-
doesn't it depend on the state too? So, like,
yeah,
I know
yeah,
in
sure.
other states you can, like, some states are now doing cigarettes at 21.
Yeah. Well,
And
yeah,
then
it's just like
here
pot, like in
is
Colorado.
18.
Same thing.
Pot, you have to be 21, I think, and then, but I think that's just more of a state deal, and that's when you kind of deal with the cards you've been dealt
Now,
or
wait,
move to
we're going
another
back.
state.
Pot has to be 21.
Pot does have to be. I'm pretty sure it has to be
In
21.
Colorado?
I've never been to Colorado.
Yeah, I
for-
think I'm not sure. I don't know Colorado law, but because we're going to talk about the pot thing a little bit too, because they addressed it. They were trying to pass it. There was a bill to try to get marijuana
I told y'all.
legalized.
I told y'all. I
Craziness.
told y'all they were doing that.
Anyway,
okay,
I
so
think
the
that
next
the
one.
cigarette thing is not a bad thing though, because I don't smoke and I don't think it's good for
Right,
you.
but see, that is imposing your. Well, okay,
true.
whatever.
I wouldn't
okay,
pass
cannabis.
a law on it. I just didn't care about it.
I mean,
I'm not affected.
this is the whole thing too, and this is how we treat our old people. Oh well, you're old now, and you have a high blood pressure, and you have a hard time going to the bathroom by yourself. We're going to stick you in an old folks' home, and you can't
Yeah,
have any
look at
beer
Christy
ever for the
Brinkley.
rest of your life, and you can't smoke. Go put those cigarettes out because you might die. So you lose when you get older. The whole problem is that older people, they hate nursing homes because they lose all their freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they want the freedom to make a bad decision and go smoke a cigarette.
I don't really believe that though. 'Cause
Really?
my,
I
my
do.
wife has worked at the Houston Hospice, and they can pretty much, if they're compliant, they'll be able to do things.
Well, do
like
they
that.
have a facility where they keep people, like a nursing home,
Well, I
or
mean, a
is it
hospice.
in-home?
So I mean, you're pretty
But
much on the way
hospice-
out.
But hospice, well, but that's in your home. That's different.
No, Houston Hospice is a nonprofit.
But hospice is usually administered in the home. So does your
No,
wife
this is actually
go,
a location.
Oh, okay,
This
so
is
it's a
this
facility.
Is yeah, it's a. It's
and
a,
they let them go out back and smoke if they want to, or drink a beer?
Yeah, if they're nice.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, see, I think that's important. I really do.
'Cause, I mean, you look
can't
at-
take
you
freedom
look-
away because you're old, and you can't take freedom away because you're not 21. 18 to 21 is an adult.
Yeah, but nursing home to me it seems similar to like living in an apartment. No matter what age you are, there's rules in the apartment. Like I can't
right,
just
you just have
smoke in
somebody
my
pick you
apartment.
up if you fall. And that
or
kind
like
of
say
thing.
I'm at a
You
hotel.
can't.
Well,
If
depends on what your apartment is.
Well, right.
Yeah, 'cause
so
they
you
live-
so
live
like
in an
the
apartment,
townhome
but you
I live
can't.
in, the townhome I live in,
Is it smoke free?
is smoke free.
Yeah.
So no one's allowed to smoke
Really?
anything
Oh
inside.
my gosh! What if you make it a brisket and it's smoking?
Well, that's outside.
Or
So-
smoky time.
okay.
Can you go sit on your balcony and smoke a cigarette if you want
Yeah.
to? Just not in that.
that's
the
not
place.
in the-
But
inside
see,
the house.
a lot of these
Weird.
nursing homes, these people can't do that. They're not allowed. They
Well,
can't.
don't put your family in that nursing home.
Well, because if you go,
I just think it's
the nursing
it's-
homes you're in, there's always extended rules when the daughter or whatever's there. So I could go there, take my grandfather out, go
Right.
on a trip, go
That's-
on somewhere, and they can smoke.
Well, that's if
Or you
you've
can
got
bu-
family
or if
members
the-
that will do that for you.
Or if the home's smart, you just pay extra money and they'll take them out for you. So that's how
it's
you
all
make.
different because one of my friends
And
was
if-
thinking about putting her, the mom, they're both in their 80s, was thinking about putting her dad in a facility because he's wheelchair bound. He can't take care of himself. It's too hard on her. She's already in her 80s. And they were having, just like you were saying, a bad time actually going and going through the places, finding one that wouldn't take their freedom away. But there was one they found that gave them a lot of freedom. So I think
Yeah,
it's like a
it's
school or anything
important.
else. You just have to look for the people that are going to do it that kind of suit your needs.
that
But it's
go
it's
with
a-
the person that's being put in.
it's
there.
also a protective issue because some people shouldn't
Well,
be
if
smoking.
you
if
have a
it's oxygen.
lifestyle,
Oxygen.
if you have a lifestyle, it's always important when you're going to migrate somewhere to see if that agrees with your lifestyle.
Right.
Yes.
Because really, like where we, like for example, where my wife had moved, there's so many rules there for little things that are kind of
the
ridiculous
apartment?
for the apartment. Like it's just kind of,
really?
it's really weird. Like for example, I can't install a garage door. If I install it, I have to pay for it, and then I have to pay a monthly fee to have it on site. And I was like, that's really
Garage
weird.
door?
Yeah,
That'd
well,
be-
because my wife is 4'10", and so I was going to pull out the Disability Act on them because I was like, she can't open and close the garage
I didn't know
without a
4
garage door.
4 feet
4'10".
10 inches.
She's
Wow.
tiny.
So
She's little.
yeah, she really can't close the garage. And I was like, how am I supposed to do this? And they're like, oh, well, you can purchase a garage door opener. And I was like, oh, cool. There's like $200,
You're
right?
talking about an opener they wouldn't let you put in.
Yeah, well, I go, yeah, I'll just buy one. I was looking them up, and they're like, yeah, and then you have to pay a monthly fee.
Why? What was the fee
I don't
for?
know. Just having a garage door opener. I have no
Fee to
idea.
the apartment complex?
To the
See,
townhouse.
this
Townhomes.
is just people going crazy. And
Oh my
that's what
gosh.
bothers me about this
let me
Senate
ask
Bill
real quick, did you get it?
21.
No, what I did is I just put a string up for her.
Yeah, so
Okay.
she can grab it.
Because out of principle, I was like, I'm not paying that fee.
Good. I would not pay the fee either. That's ridiculous.
But again, like you're agreeing to these things, and you
Right.
shouldn't be shocked about that kind of stuff. Like to me, it's just like that. You just adapt, and then there it is. But especially for an old folks' home, what I've learned dealing with that, because I had several family members, is depends on how you treat the nurses there. Because these are people,
That's everywhere.
That's so
Mike.
true.
Everywhere.
Yeah, if you're nice enough there, you can pretty much get away with anything. 'Cause, I mean, I remember seeing people smoking dope there, and I was like, oh, that's wild. But then again, it's like if you're just really kind and the family's really kind, they'll get the extra pudding.
That
They'll get the
is-
foot rub. They'll do.
That
true.
historically
That's
goes
so
all the
true,
way
Dick.
back to the the
Well, you're
oldest
not putting them in
biblical time,
prison. I mean,
Hopefully not. But see, that's my concern. And, you have a lot of these family members. Oh, Papa, you smoked for 4,700 years, and now's the last day, and we're putting you in this nursing home, and you can't smoke,
Yeah, well,
and
maybe
you can't
Papa
do
wasn't
this.
nice while they were growing up, and they're
Who
getting back at
cares?
him.
Who cares? He doesn't have to be a
that's why we should have
prisoner.
the right to kill ourselves, right?
Boy, how did we
No.
get there? Okay, I
No,
want to talk
no.
about cannabis.
Okay,
The
yeah.
I'm tired of dealing with my daughter. She said I can't smoke cigarettes. Just kill me.
I'll show her. Yeah. The legislature failed to pass legislation decriminalizing marijuana or even a bill updating its anachronistic statutory spelling. Interesting. But House Bill 3703 does expand the medical conditions for which low THC medical cannabis or CBD oil can be legally prescribed to include MLS, ALS, Parkinson's, terminal cancer, autism, and many kinds of seizure disorders.
And we talked about
We've
that
talked
before.
about that.
And if you're a high functioning autistic, and I think there's a lot of them out there, smoke your pot. But I think high functioning autistics probably don't want to smoke pot because they like to be aware of things going on.
I've heard for autistic, I know a girl who's got a brother that's autistic, and she said that it really, really helps him.
Really?
Which
and
I think
her.
is,
It's probably calm.
I don't know. I don't know. But she did say that it really helps him, that
Really?
he's like a different person. He's very combative, but then when levels of autism. Okay, red light cameras. This is
Love this
interesting.
one. Yes, very important to know.
HB 1631 bans red light cameras, yes, across the state, although it does permit current contracts for the devices to continue until their expiration dates. There's been a
doesn't-
lot of
I'm
controversy
just
about
telling you,
this.
you see that red light camera, they may be taking a picture of you, but they can't give you a ticket anymore. So go forward and run through the red light.
And breastfeeding and breast pumping, I must say this for my daughter,
Oh, let me
Rachel,
go back
if she's
on that one.
listening.
The-
Okay.
The red light cameras were always, my kids were getting them all the time
Yeah.
because they would turn right on a red, but it would be one of those streets that had the curve where it looked like you just had to yield, but you didn't, just because it was a separate lane. And they got the red light camera so many times on that. You would think they had learned, but they didn't. And it's really kind of, I mean, you can fight it, but that's what they were kind of breaching, but you don't have to worry about that anymore. Drive safely, of course, but
Right.
but you don't have to worry about looking at that red light camera if you're just, thinking you're complying and
Well,
you're in that lane.
and so many of them are defective. They're faulty, and
I don't know.
all
The people
sorts
have
of
gotten them.
stuff.
They usually are, caught dead in the water with that camera.
Yeah.
But there's no picture of the driver. That's what always bothers me. You don't know who's driving the car.
See, that's the other thing too. Someone could be driving your car, and then you're the one who's notified with a ticket in the mail.
Right.
Breastfeeding and pumping. This is interesting. House Bill 541 clarifies state law to make clear that women in Texas are allowed to pump breast milk, not just breastfeed, anywhere in public. I think it's interesting we had to have a law for that.
State law makes it clear that women are allowed to pump breast milk. But that is insane. I remember I'm a culprit because I breastfed my kids and I wasn't obnoxious about it. But
Sure.
if you're at the Galleria and you're skating and shopping and you're there all day long and you've got your kid with you and that's all their only nourishment they've got, then you've got to go somewhere.
Right.
And you'd be locked in with all these people. And if you're with a bunch of girls, or usually about 4
Which
or 5
is
of my friends,
fine, yeah.
you just have your poncho or whatever. Nobody knows what's going on. I mean, it wasn't like I was some California naked woman or something. That would be
Right.
awful. But I didn't know that there would even need a law for something like that.
Maybe
That's
it's the
kinda
punk, you know, but it's
It's
a little more
probably
involved.
for establishments restricting people from doing that.
for being
Yeah.
crazy and liberal and naked.
Well, no,
and-
it's more of like if I own a restaurant, I don't want you pumping in here, and that's probably to tell those guys you can't say you have to leave now.
Right.
It's
Right,
probably not
right,
for
right.
an individual on individual stuff. It's probably for an establishments
yeah.
setting up rules.
They can do it now, though. Except
So-
that, of course, that's private. Nowhere in public. So private, they can still pretty much control whatever you do. But okay, so now we're going to talk about
yeah, this says anywhere in public. Is that what you were just saying?
So
yeah.
private restaurants can still tell you no, just like with guns, can't do that. But I don't think they would do that if you're doing it discreetly. So
Well, you can go to the bathroom.
yeah.
If you can. I mean, we're pretending everyone's got this perfect life and you've got people there to watch the kids. I'll take the baby. Who knows?
I
Why
mean,
these?
34 years ago, I remember when I worked for International Paper, I had to go to
Well,
like
how
the
often
public.
is this happening?
It was
Well, it must
when
be
you're when
happening.
you own,
No, I'm saying like, what are the chances of running into somebody breastfeeding?
yeah,
every day?
very very
Like,
seldom
I don't,
it's
I don't
just
think I've actually seen a woman breastfeed in public.
Or that you knew she was
That you knew she
breastfeeding.
was, 'cause it's
like,
usually pretty
well, I know it's
discreet.
obvious when there's like, because my sisters have had kids,
Yeah.
and it's
Right.
kind of obvious when there's like a shawl or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, well, I used
But
to
I'm
wear
talking
a
about my
poncho.
normal outgoing life. Like, I don't really go, oh, that woman's breastfeeding. It's more of like,
I've seen it in church because the kids are
Well, church
crying and
makes
you got to
sense.
get them quiet, and that's the only thing they're eating. Oh, I'm talking about infants. I'm not talking when it's like 4 years old and the kids. That's
those are
kind
the
of weird
best.
shit, pardon my French. but anyway, it's just weird. So anyway, it doesn't happen very often. You're right, but when it does happen, like you have to breastfeed, then
No
you've
one can
gotta
tell
do it.
you cannot pump.
Yes. Okay, but I did it at International Paper, and I was able to pull that off for a year for both of my kids, and they didn't have a problem with it. I think if liberal International Paper didn't have a problem with it, then other places shouldn't either, and my kids were healthy from it. All right.
Yes.
So let's talk about the laws that you can talk about at cocktail parties.
you
Okay.
shouldn't bring your kids out in public, basically, guys.
yeah, yeah. And for God's sake, not until they're 21, because who knows what they're going to do.
Oh my gosh, deliverance, what they do up here. There's no socialization. All right, so attorneys should always be prepared to answer eternal cocktail party questions. And this year's legislation, this legislature's, did they change any laws? Everybody has asked that. Oh, when I go to a cocktail party, like I go to any cocktail parties, I'm not that socially, interactive. But and I don't think we call it a cocktail party either. But let's say we go to Papacitas and we're drinking some beers, right? And the first thing that comes up is not like, hey, what did the legislature pass this year? It just doesn't come up. But let's just say you're with a bunch of attorneys. And these are things that people would maybe ask us just kind of on the cuff. So here are, so take it away. What are some of the answers to all the many asked
Well,
questions?
I think this one is interesting. That they've ended their ban on brass knuckles. I mean, to me, this goes back to the 20s,
The
There's-
one you pick is brass knuckles.
I think that's interesting because I think of James Cagney and I think of, all those guys and, they always had these brass knuckles and I know they've been banned forever. Why in the world would they lift the ban on brass knuckles, Tony?
Because brass knuckles, I've had people that have actually, they're not supposed to have weapons, and they've got them, and they've got these brass knuckles, and they're part of their keychain and stuff. And they're telling me, because they're in gangs, but they're not bad people. I mean, they usually get in trouble for something else, but I'm representing them, and I really like these people. And they're telling me, I live in basically what amounts to a project in Southwest Houston. I cannot protect myself. I can't carry a gun because I have DWI or I'm not current on my child support, and none of them are current on their child support. Then I've got to have something to protect myself, and this is it. So part of it might be because these people need to protect themselves. Secondly, almost anything could be like brass knuckles. You could just grab a baseball bat out of your car, and that's not banned, in my opinion.
Keys, a pair of keys or something.
What do you think? What is your opinion? Why do you think they're suddenly let us have brass knuckles?
I bet they just kind of go into that no nonsense kind of stuff because
Not the same ones that banned us with the 21 year. That those same people were legislating.
yeah. I think it's just something that they probably thought that some people were getting arrested and getting upset, like, like for example, one of my friends was in a play, and he was a police officer, and he had one of those nightsticks that was extractable. Well, it's in his costume, and he gets pulled over for speeding, and then they find it, and they're like, "Well, you can't have this. This is a Class C weapon
And
or whatever."
impersonating an officer.
Well, an officer thing that was easily explained.
Yeah,
but
right.
this was like, yeah, you can't have this. So they arrested him. And yeah, they arrested him, and so I think it's something.
That was not a very nice officer. There was no reason to do that.
So what happened? Did he go to jail? And
Well,
get
yeah, he
bailed
got
out?
booked, and yeah, he got bailed. And
when
all
you get
that
arrested,
stuff,
you
so-
got. I'm sure it got dismissed.
But I think that's probably where that came from. Is people were like, I don't think those are still banned. I forgot what they call them. You know
This
what I'm
says-
talking about?
I do.
Back
the
in the
nightstick.
brass, it says building on the legislature's legislation of switchblades. I guess you can have those now in 2013. House Bill 446, starting September 1st, ends the state's bans on brass knuckles, so you can have
Well,
them.
I'm talking about the sticks.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
that,
the
I think you
nightsticks.
still there's still a prohibition on that. I think.
Really?
But really, those aren't very prevalent. I mean, do you know many people that've got a stick?
Well,
Well,
his actor friend did.
Yeah. Well.
Well, I think
As part of his costume.
It's something
Same
too.
question
They
to health
probably
and-
introduced it for protecting police, because a lot of problems police officers I know have, because I have family members, is the concealed weapons.
Mm-hmm.
So when they're approaching somebody, they don't know brass knuckles, or you can conceal them, even though it's kind of obvious that you have something on your hand, but
Mm-hmm.
you don't know until it's kind of too late. And
Right.
I think it's probably going to be banned again in 10 years when a couple cops
I
get
do
hit in
too.
the face.
Yeah,
I do
probably
too.
so. You're
No,
right.
it's interesting, and that's why I think it's interesting. Is they've been banned forever, and now they're lifting the ban.
But you
and
see, you can-
somebody's going to get punched.
Brass knuckles could be. This pin would be a weapon if I used
Well,
it.
no,
like
really,
that.
well, a lot of
Yeah, but
people will
that's
say get a
different.
roll of quarters.
Right, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Brass knuckles, in and of themselves, almost everything could be banned, because if you want to hit somebody, it doesn't take much just to grab it and hit. You know, you're prepared. Your knives or your little pocket knife or whatever. That's not going to be banned. So I don't know. I've had a couple of clients.
Probably
that
what
that
happened was some company wants to make brass knuckles. They called up
Yeah.
some
Yeah,
guy
that
and they're
makes
like,
more
"Hey,
sense
you
to
want
me.
us to move? You want us to move there?"
We're
You
so
gotta-"
negative here, aren't we? Yeah.
Well, probably it's realistically what happened. They're like,
Well,
"Hey,
the
we got to
brass
change
market
this."
started taking a dive. They were like, "Hey, all these
Well,
dumb kids
why-
under
why
21,
just brass
they'll
knuckles?
buy them."
Why just brass knuckles?
know.
Why
Well,
not?
that's
apparently
what-
you can
I think
also
it's
have switchblades now
interesting.
too.
Yeah.
So
Well,
there-
I think Switchblades was 2013. Then.
Yeah,
Yeah,
2013.
it
Yeah.
was.
But they're
So,
slowly coming along.
That same company probably did Switchblades. Now they're moving on to
It's the
brass
steel
knuckles.
industry, you know, those steelers, the same as just like when I was in, the Oiler cheerleader business. Those steelers, they're bad. They're knocking the door down. We'll get them. Okay, so
This is interesting, Tony. It kind of goes to what you were talking about,
Yes.
delivery of alcohol.
Yes.
So read that one, the first one.
State Bill 1232 and 1450 allow for the expanded legal home delivery of alcoholic products and beverages, and House Bill 1545 permits Texans to buy, quote, beer to go directly from craft brewery tap rooms. And that was a big deal, because there's a lot of people that have got small breweries in Houston that were talking about now finally being able to sell them direct, and they couldn't do that before. So I think they may have had a lot of this legislation, but you can get products, alcohol delivered to house. I thought you could do that anyway, but I think because we have like wineries in Texas now, because we could get from Napa, we were getting, when we went there, we were such, we were so easily persuaded. We signed up on these lists, and suddenly we were
Right.
getting
Under
all
the
this wine.
influence of that
Yeah.
drug.
Under the influence of that wine at those wineries.
We don't. You know what though? We did do some of the tastings.
Yeah, that's how they get
Uh-huh.
you.
That was insane.
Yeah.
We had a limousine, and there's pictures of us with our head out. And, we're partying, and I was like with Lucy. I was in the little wine thing, stomping grapes. And
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
And thank goodness we had a driver. But yeah, I think it was under the influence of the many different.
You
types
signed
of-
up for all these home delivery things.
We went to Bordeaux. They're kind of snobby over there in Bordeaux, France. They're like, well, in California, I'm saying Italian, but
Yeah.
however they spoke. I'm not
Great
a linguist.
impression.
You have to
Yeah.
start with wee wee. That always helps. Wee wee is
They
sure.
were saying that they don't do it right in California. They grow all types of grapes on their in their vineyards and at their chateaus. But in France, they only grow 2 to 3 types of grapes, like at the Rothschild when it's Rothschilds. There they specialize in just a few of it, because those are the ones that nature naturally.
Right, right.
And then they said in California they've got irrigation, but we don't irrigate in Bordeaux. We are better than
We
them.
just pray a lot and hope that God will send the rain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess they're still doing pretty well. All right, so this to me was a little bit weird, but it says in the State Bill 476 prohibits cities from enacting restrictions on restaurants that want to let diners bring their pets into their outdoor patios. I didn't know there was any restriction. I thought pretty much that you could bring your cat, dog, pet, parakeet outdoors.
Well, it's interesting because it's saying that that's a personal decision that the diner makes. It's a policy, it's a private thing. But yeah, no, they couldn't do that before. Okay, I get to read the next one because we had that guy on our show, the Lemonade Day guy. Look what happened. Win for Big Lemon. House Bill 234 allows young Texans to legally run lemonade and other non-alcoholic beverage stands on private property and public parks, overriding any local government or neighborhood association objections. So he was successful.
Yes, and
do you remember that gentleman's name? That was
No,
lemonade?
but after I talked to him, I wanted to start a lemonade business. 'Cause I'm like, I can do this. I've got lemons. I need to go take his little course. But I think there might be some. I'm not sure about this because I haven't read the bill, but I thought there is. You have to fill out some paperwork. You have to do some things to make sure that that you can't just plop a stand on your lawn, but you might be able to. So I don't know. We'll have to go look at that again or have him back on again. House Bill. In fact, Producer Dick, can you look up House Bill 234 and to see if there's any restrictions on somebody plopping a lemonade stand on
any
their
private property or public park?
property? And,
What was it, 284?
Yeah,
234.
234 are public parks, because as it stands right now, the way this is worded, I could, or my kids, or your grandkids, could go put a lemonade stand on our new Memorial Park out there that's right off 45. I think it's beautiful. But I read in the paper that they won't let you fish in there because they've got koi and goldfish. Because I saw some people fishing, and then I could be wrong on that, but just last week I read no fishing in that Memorial little lake pond because there's specialty fish that need to stay in there, which kind of surprised me. I thought people could fish. All right, so while Dick is looking up to find out if we could just go plop a lemonade stand over in Memorial Park and sell our lemonade and compete with McDonald's down there, another bill is House Bill 2789. It criminalizes the sending of nude or sexually explicit photos to unwilling recipients through text message, social media, and online dating applications. Now, that doesn't really surprise me a bit.
What I'm reading is you have to be under the age of 18
Okay.
For temporary selling lemonade, and it's basically saying that a municipality, county, or any other local public health authorities may not adopt or enforce a ordinance, order, or rule that prohibits
Restricting it, right?
restricting an individual younger than 18.
Okay, so there
So,
you go. I won't
no
be able to start a
restriction-
lemonade business and have it there permanently. So it's like a food truck or something, a lemonade food truck. But I could get my 17-year-old client, daughter, friend, niece, nephew to get a food truck and go pull it on the Memorial thing, right? Because it doesn't have any requirements what the stand are. So, okay, food truck people and 17-year-old kids, 17 and under. I can see that happening.
That's awesome.
All right, so all right, the bill about sending nude and sexually explicit photos to people that don't want it, that's kind of common sense. I think they've already got laws about that. That's completely inappropriate, and I think there's more than just this bill. But anyway, all right, so those are kind of the more fun ones. Now, assumed name filings, and this, you would think this wasn't a big deal, but to me it kind of is because I do assumed name filings for people all the time. It's really pretty simple. Over here in Montgomery County, you can walk down to the clerk's office, just walk in. They've got a form you can fill out. They'll notarize it right there. And as long as it's not taken, you can get 10 years of operating under an assumed name. And you can use that on your lemonade stand. You could have your law practice or whatever it may be. But the question that I have with my clients that aren't just doing something small but have like insurance companies and tire companies and that kind of thing, they want to make sure that nobody else gets the name of their business because, they've developed a name behind it. And you can do it federally. It's a little bit more expensive if you get a federal trademark on it. But the safest way has always been to file through the Secretary of State so that nobody in the state can take over your name. But I always I was very much, I influenced them, persuaded them to go down to their local county clerks to make sure it was registered there too. Well, this new bill amends the Texas Business and Commerce Code to provide that an assumed name certificate for a domestic or foreign filing entity need only be filed with the Texas Secretary of State and not with any county. And before, you could have somebody, at least arguably, even if they had it in the state, because they weren't checking in Montgomery County and Harris County, Waller County, they could have let's call it Christine's Bar and Grill. If they could have one in the state, but now, but it's really going toward where you're trying to the bigger ones like Dr. Pepper and that kind of thing. But like when Johnny Manziel had his little. What was he called? He was Johnny Football, that kind of thing. You wouldn't want a Johnny Football, merchandising, but he got a trademark. But anyway, you now don't have to go to the county. This bill modernizes the Texas assumed name statute to conform to most other states. Assumed name certificates are available online to the public from the Secretary of State website, and you can do it all online. You can pay for it online. I just have to make sure, and they won't. I tried it too with another friend of mine. That has I forgot what kind of business it was, but he couldn't get it because the name that he wanted was too close to one that was used in the state. So they monitor a lot more closely in the Secretary of State. But the county let them file it. So there was going to be some disruption there. County filings of assumed name certificates continue to be required for joint ventures, general partnerships, real estate investment trust, sole proprietorships, and trusts. So I guess I say that, and at the same time, they've got the little loophole that says you still need it for joint ventures, general partnerships, real estate investment trust, estate, sole proprietorships, and trusts, but it wouldn't be for corporations and LLCs, which is what I was working with on that.
Right.
So what else do you have for us?
Well, Toni, you wanted to talk about this walking quorums.
Yes.
Walking quorums under the Texas Open Meeting Act.
Yes.
Why did you like
And
that?
that's because Montgomery County had a state county commissioner, Craig Doyle. I think he was the county commissioner, and then he and another county. In fact, it's our county commissioner. Do you know who our county commissioners are right now?
What do you want to know?
I want to know their names because the other one he was reelected. I can't remember his name.
There's Nowak.
Not Nowak.
Metz.
Not Metz.
And Riley.
Charlie Riley. Thank you. He's the county commissioner for our area, and I forgot his. Sorry, Charlie. I mean, I've met you. I've
Sorry,
talked with you. But anyway, he and Craig Doyle apparently had talked together and were charged with not complying with the Open Meeting Act when they did something that affected the Woodlands Group, which have got a great lobby. They're rich. They're powerful.
Right.
And so the Woodlands Group were able to get them indicted on not complying with the Open Meetings Act. And the Open Meeting Act basically says that government officials can't, in fact, to read it, it's pretty simple, and I'm paraphrasing here, and I'm not going to say it right, but basically, when there's a requirement, like there is for homeowners associations and for commissioners, that they have to have their meetings in public, so there can't be any stuff going on under the table. And what was happening was the commissioners in this particular instance, and just like they do in homeowners associations, were the members of the board, and in this case it was commissioners, but it happens all the time at homeowners associations. They were meeting so that they didn't have to have a quorum, so it had to be public. They were meeting one-on-one, like coffee talk, like a beer place or something, so that they could talk about the issues they wanted passed separately and lobby, and then when they got together, they were all in agreement. Well, that's completely wrong.
Right.
And so Doyle was convicted.
And is that called a walking quorum?
Well, yes, because they're meeting separately in small groups, so they don't need the quorum to make it public, to have a meeting set so people can be there, so they can voice their opinion. That was a great loophole to get around it. And so what happened was, and I'll read this and then I'll talk about it, the walking quorums under the Texas Open Meetings Act. State Bill 1640 amends the Texas Open Meetings Act, it's called TOMA, but here it's also called something else when I'm asking for my Texas Open Meeting Act request. You can pretty much, Montgomery County is very transparent in the sense that if you ask for records that are open to the public, you just fill out a form online and you send it to them. You get it pretty quick. Our city and the county, they are fast.
Yeah.
And they really help you. So I will commend them on that.
Right.
The ones I've only been denied, they won't give it to me right away. And then I suddenly get an attorney general opinion saying this is why you're not going to get it. So then I got to go fight like a lawyer to get the records that I really want. That's bad. But then I know something's up because they're not giving me what I'm looking for, right? But for the most part, if you're looking for stuff, they'll give it to you. Anyway, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals in State v. Doyle, which is Craig Doyle, struck down the restrictions on walking quorums. In other words, they said, hey, you can do this. We don't have a problem with it. Well, the legislature came back and they said, no, So they just passed this effective. Let me see. It's effective June 10th, 2000. So
Mhm,
it's
so
already
it's already
effective.
in
The
effect.
amendment resuscitates the ban on walking quorums. So while the Criminal Court of Appeals said no problem, go ahead and do it. I'm just wondering who got paid what, because everybody knows everybody. The legislature came back, and this is the way it should be, and said, we're not having any part of that.
Right.
You don't get to go around under the table making little deals with people without having the public, who you're supposed to be representing and protecting, know about it with respect to this very good law, making it so that you have to have open meetings.
Right.
Right? So
No.
that they reversed that actual meeting.
Well, so I just want our listeners to know
Law.
what you just said. You know, that's the way that it's supposed to be. When something happens and it's not good, and you can get a case, and a judge says, no, that's fine, you're okay,
Yeah,
do
slap
that.
you on the wrist.
Then what happens is the legislature needs to go back and say, no,
Yes.
that ruling, that court case crossed a line we don't want.
We don't believe that
in our
one
state.
judge in a summary judgment or one Supreme Court justice or whoever it was for people as opposed to everybody in the public.
Right.
Just like in a homeowners association, you shouldn't have a board that can make all these rules when you have all the people that are saying this
We
isn't the way we want
disagree,
it. Then you
right.
have to go back through and you actually have to get an amendment. You have to go through that process and get it done. And that's what
the
lobbyists
legislator
They
did.
went through and that's a good thing.
It
They
is.
changed some law that should not be. You should not be able to make you shouldn't be able to have these meetings under the table for your, limited constituency that's giving you a lot of money, like the steel people that want the brass knuckles, perhaps. You should have everybody that's within that group in the state of Texas citizens say that you can't do that. Okay, so
Right.
hemp and smoking. You want to talk about that? This is what we went over before, but we're going to reiterate what they actually say about it to reinforce what we had said before in case it was confusing.
Yeah. Okay. So a bill to lessen penalties for small amounts of marijuana passed the House but failed the Senate. That's interesting. It passed the House but failed the Senate. However, House Bill 1325 passed, creating the Hemp Farming Act. Oh, yeah, we've talked about this on the
House
show.
Bill 1325 passed. creating that.
1325, it passed, which intends to regulate the commercial production of hemp. Hemp is defined as the plant cannabis sativa L with a THC concentration of not more than 0.3%. House Bill 1325 is effective June 10th, so it's already effective
Right,
2019.
that's the hemp one.
Uh-huh.
right?
And so then this next one raises the smoking age in Texas to 21, except for military personnel.
Yeah, good.
Tony,
Yes.
there you
I
go.
didn't know the whole
I
bill.
still don't feel good about that, but
I
at
do.
least they did that.
Yes.
The bill also requires that. Okay, so what is that telling our kids? If you want to smoke, go join the military.
Yes, if it's that important to you. I think it's, yes.
Why do we have all these constitutional rights and all these silly laws that say you can't do this until you're 21 and stuff like that? That's just ridiculous.
I am an advocate for not smoking because I think that I remember Polly Puffer in the 8th grade health classes that we took in gym.
I remember her.
And I think that that's just really bad for you. And I think vaping is bad for you. And I think people should eat M&Ms instead. I don't have stock in M&Ms, but it's legal. And it got me past the bar somehow.
Right. Okay, so 21 except for military personnel. The bill also requires identification of anyone under 30 who attempts to purchase tobacco products, cigarettes, or e-cigarettes.
That's kind of weird. That's a hanging sentence. Or you have to have identification for anyone under 30. Why? If you only have to be 21.
Well, because we're all about controlling people. Yeah, that's
Okay,
why.
we talked a little bit about the handbills and the licensing, but this will clarify anything that we did with any misconception. House Bill 121 creates a new defense for a person with a concealed handgun license who promptly departs premises prohibiting handguns when asked to do so. The bill intends to address a situation where a CHL holder mistakenly carries a handgun onto premises prohibiting such, but promptly departs after receiving notice to depart. And that's just like trespassing. If you
Right.
didn't know that you're on someone else's land and they say get off and you leave, then you can't get in trouble for it
Right.
because you've mitigated the damages. Okay, so we have 3 minutes, 2
We
minutes.
have about a minute and a half.
In the whole show? Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. We're going to talk about very much in detail the next show. We're going to talk about the Texas Citizen Participation Act. It's very important. It's overbroad. People are getting sued, and it's not in a public interest. In other words, you are being
You talking about anti-slap?
yeah, you're being you can be defamed by almost anybody if the other side says, well, the public needs to know about
Right.
that, and that's improper, and they fine you. And they've changed that now because they shouldn't have. We're going to talk about it in the next show.
So
There's
they've
also-
made it more restrictive?
They're making it so that it helps the common person can't be defamed, which is appropriate.
Oh, okay.
And then the last thing is we went to an emergency room. Not the last thing, but the last important thing, I think. House Bill 2041 requires freestanding emergency rooms to give patients a printed disclosure in English and Spanish that they list that in-network health plans and average price the patient may be charged for a procedure, and not just say they take and accept certain insurance, because they were saying they accepted and they wouldn't be in the people were coming in and it wouldn't be in their plan, and they were paying exorbitant fees and getting sued for it. And now they actually have to post specific list of if you're actually in their plan on these little emergency
okay.
clinics that are freestanding. That because there was so much of this going on, so that's really important. The legislature was great this
Yes,
session.
absolutely. Shout out to them. Thank
How
you,
much
guys.
time do we have?
So we appreciate you listening. You can listen to us next week. You can download the podcast tomorrow. And we want to remind you to always
Serve God by serving others.
have a great week, guys. Thanks for listening.